So you're going on vacation. You are so excited. You're going on vacation and you're packing your stuff and you've got your toothbrush, you got your sunscreen, you got your shorts, you got your t-shirt, you've got your wallet, you've got your passport. But what are you bringing in order to ensure that you can afford to buy food while you're away? Is it cash? Is it credit cards? Is it debit? To talk about the different options available to you and what might the best option be depending on where you're headed, we're talking to Barry Choi. He is a personal finance and budget travel expert and founder of The Money We Have. Hello, Barry.
Good to be back, Bruce.
I still remember back in the day traveling with traveler's checks. So you go into the American Express office, you would cash a check, you'd have cash. Obviously, it is so much easier logistically now, but that said, there's hidden costs and things that we might not be aware of. So we're going to talk about this subject, but I want to ask you first how you would guide us in terms of destination. Does best practice differ markedly if it's the US versus Europe versus Asia?
Oh, it definitely depends on where you're going. So, just recently I went to Japan. Even though many places accept credit cards these days, quite a few restaurants still accept cash only, especially when those restaurants have those vending machines where you put in your money and they give you a ticket and you just hand it to the chef. And then obviously a lot of countries, if it's a tipping culture, you want to have a little bit of cash on hand. So it does require a little bit of research, and that's where your starting point is. And then you can decide what's best, cash or credit.
So let's start with a focus on the US. It's geographically very easy for Canadians to get there. If you got a passport, super easy. What are your top tips on how to reduce those hidden fees, get the best currency conversion possible? Is it credit card?
Yeah, it depends on the credit card, but let's take it a step back first and discuss what are these hidden fees? Because some people are listening is like, wait, what are you talking about? What fees are we paying here? So generally speaking, whenever you use a credit card and you make a purchase in a foreign currency, that's anything that's not Canadian dollars, they add on a 2.5% foreign transaction fees. And most people don't even see this fee because it's baked right into the exchange. So when you get your statement, you think like, oh, that's good, but you don't realize that 2.5% fee is already there. You've already paid it. So there's no way of avoiding it unless you've got a no foreign transaction fee credit card. And that's exactly what it sounds like. There's about a dozen credit cards / prepaid credit cards in Canada. They charge you 0% fee. There's still technically a fee. So if you're using Visa or MasterCard, there is a straight exchange. So it's not the exact spot rate that the Bank of Canada gets, but it's significantly lower than everyone else. So if you're talking about 2.5% savings, that's a huge amount.
How do you think about whether it's worth it to do that? Because you're also someone who follows points very closely, and getting a new and different card to save a little bit on currency conversion means you're not going to be earning the points. So how do you calculate break even on that?
You know what, Bruce? I'm going to break it down for the simplicity points for most people. I like to just advise them, you know what? Just get a credit card or prepaid credit card that has no foreign transaction fees. There's a few different ones. I'll name them if you want me to, but I like the ones that let me withdraw from ATM so I can get cash with no foreign transaction fees. Obviously, I might have to pay the ATM provider a one-time fee, but because it's a prepaid card, I can manage my expenses, and then I can also make big purchases. Now, I'm glad you brought up points because to me, it comes down to the math, right? So if the fee is 2.5%, if the points I'm getting are worth more than that, then it is a good deal. For example, there's one credit card out there that earns you 5 times the points on grocery stores and restaurants. And if you transfer those points to a certain airline, you can double the value of your points. So what I'm getting at is if I'm making a purchase at a restaurant in the United States, somewhere in Asia with this specific credit card, it's like a 10% return. Subtract 2.5, I'm still coming up at 7.5. That said, I like where you brought this up to begin with. A lot of people have said to me, it's like, well, I'm earning 1% in points, but I'm like, but you're paying 2.5 in fees, so it's not a big deal. So we really need to do the math, know the credit card, know the conversion costs, and know what the value of your actual points are worth in the long run.
You mentioned cash. In some cultures, it's critical to pay for stuff. In others, it's helpful to pay for tipping or small discretionary items. Should we be going to the bank and getting some pesos or yen before we depart? Or is this something that we should, get a cash advance on a credit card or take money out of an ATM on arrival?
Yeah, so it really depends on where you're going. So we're just talking about the US. To me, generally speaking, if you just go to your local bank here, the currency exchange on US dollars is actually very competitive, right? It's around 2 to 2.5. So you know what, save yourself the trouble. Just go to the bank, get some US dollars. Who cares, right? However, there have been some countries I've been to where I've gone to the bank and I've done the math, and the spread is absolutely insane. This was like almost a decade ago, Bruce. I went to Brazil with my wife, and the spread was 13%. Unfortunately, I knew the
Wow.
exchange in my head. And this is where they would have to order the money for you. And I'm pretty sure they still have to do it, right? But imagine someone who just doesn't look up the rates and they're like, oh, that sounds fair. And they're like, you just paid 13%, which is insane. But these days, what I tell people, if you want simplicity, just use your regular debit card. If you look on the back of your card, it'll say Plus or whatever network, and you just find a local ATM, preferably with a legit bank, not just a standalone ATM. And if they've got the matching symbol, you can use your card in most cases, right? So yes, you'll
And
have
and if you use your card, are you going to get a bit more competitive currency conversion rate?
generally speaking, yes, because the banks, like your home bank, says they'll charge you 2.5% foreign transaction fee. And for debit cards, sometimes it goes up to 3.5 or 4. But at least you know exactly what you're going to pay, right? And in addition, sometimes your local bank your bank and the local bank may charge you a one-time fee, whether that be $2 or $5. So again, you kind of need to do a little bit of math. If you're maxing out your daily limit, say you arrive in Mexico and you take out 1,000 Canadian dollars in pesos because you know you're going to use it, paying a $10 fee plus the exchange probably isn't a big deal. However, let's just say you're going to multiple countries over like a course of 3 months, you're a digital nomad or something else. You probably want to look into one of those prepaid cards I was mentioning where you can just use local ATMs without paying a foreign exchange fee, and you just pay the one-time fee. Like I said, there are a few different online banks that offer this now, which is very good. There's even a major bank that has introduced something similar. So it's funny, as we've been talking about this for a decade, I feel like, and now we're starting to see better products available.
One of the things that I never thought we'd be talking about are apps that work globally. So I have used the Uber app in lots of different places around the world, and the app works the exact same regardless of where I am. How does that come back to my bank account, and should I be doing anything differently in that regard?
Again, sort of depends. So if you're linked your Canadian bank card and that card does charge a 2.5% fee, so obviously in the local currency, if you're in the US, you're being charged US dollars for your Uber, that foreign exchange fee will kick in. But say you've got a US credit card from a Canadian bank and you add that card, you're paying in US dollars. So then there's no exchange. That said, don't forget, you do need to convert your Canadian dollars to US dollars to pay for that credit card. So you need to think about the overall value. In the end, what it really comes down to is like, can you minimize your fees? And whether that be via a local bank account, withdrawing money in ATMs or credit cards, that's what you should look at again. And even earlier, you had mentioned like, is it worth it? It's the grand scheme of things. Like, think about how many things we're ordering online these days. So many sites charge you in US dollars and they ship to Canada. Once you get one card, it's not a big deal. It solves the problems for like hopefully the rest of your life. So it doesn't really cost you any money to get one of these cards. So to me, it's worthwhile.
Yeah, and as I'm putting that financial framework into real dollars, 2.5%, that's $2.50 per $100, right? So $25 per $1,000. If your trip is $3,000, making up that number, that's $75. I wouldn't cross the street for $75 on a $3,000 vacation. Like that's, not a huge amount of money in the grand scheme. Is that right? Or am I just sounding super bougie and privileged right now?
Well, it depends on how you like to travel. And if you don't really care about $75, I certainly respect that. But to me, $75 could be a decent meal when I'm traveling. So I prefer to spend money on things I enjoy. I don't like paying for fees. I like eating. I like traveling. So if I can spend
A
that money,
long way of saying I sounded super bougie and privileged, but I appreciate
I'm
you
not going to
calling
call
in.
you that,
That's
Bruce.
good. That's good. One other question is a lot of times we book our vacation before we go. So the flights, if we're flying on a Air Canada or WestJet, that's obviously in Canadian dollars. Sometimes you book hotels on booking.com or you use Airbnb. With those particular services, are they then looping back to our home currency from the currency of our destination?
It really depends on the website. Just it's funny that you mentioned it. Just recently, I was looking for airfare on United Airlines, and I was on the U.S. site, and then I noticed it's U.S. dollars. And I was like, I thought they charged in Canadian dollars, and I realized I just had not clicked the Canadian flag in the corner. So
Right.
it really depends on the site. Some of them will convert to the currency, but this again presents a bit of a problem because where are they getting the conversion from? Are they running it themselves? Are they doing it through the bank? But a better practical example, and I think this is really relevant for listeners. Say you're abroad in Europe and you're paying with your credit card, and they ask you, do you want to charge in Canadian dollars or do you want to charge in euros? You would think Canadian dollars is the right thing to do because, hey, I can see how much it's going to cost me, right? But you always select the local currency because even though there's a fee, that is set by the terminal. And what I mean by that in Canada is Moneris or the bank, right? But if you choose Canadian dollars, the merchant can actually set that differential. And a lot of people don't realize, so they think they're making a smart decision by choosing Canadian dollars, but quite often they end up spending a lot more.
A lot for me to unpack and repack into my suitcase for my next vacation. Barry, thank you for joining us today.
No problem, anytime.
Barry Choi is personal finance expert. He does a ton of work on traveling and traveling smartly, even smarter than me. He was here to talk to us about how to spend while you're away to minimize the fees that you will pay.